Welcome, everyone. We're so happy you've joined us this morning for this very, very exciting and important topic. Um, we are here today for Salon number 92, the relation between Marija Gimbutas's work and modern matriarchal studies with Heide Goettner-Abendroth and Joan Marler, presented by Genevieve Vaughan and the International Feminists for the Gift Economy. I'm your moderator, Letitia Layson. This salon is intended to be this discussion between these two incredible women, Joan Marler and Heide Goettner-Abendroth, who've picked 6 topics that they will be presenting each equally during this discussion. And maybe what I'll do is actually just tell you what the topics are. There's going to be an introduction with Heide and Joan about their personal relationship to the topic, the terminology, the use of the word, about the paradigms, about the methodologies that they both have, their view on that, and the scope of field of research and what is necessary today in this time. So we're just really thrilled. Let me just do a short introduction so we can jump right into this really wonderful conversation they have prepared for us. Heide Goettner-Abendroth is a mother and a grandmother. She earned her PhD in philosophy of science at the University of Munich, where she's lectured for 10 years. She is published on philosophy of science and extensively on matriarchal studies and culture, and through her lifelong research on matriarchal societies, become the founder of Modern Matriarchal Studies. She also has an institute where she teaches intensive study, long programs, and you can read her full bio at our website. Joan Marler is the founder and executive director of the Institute of Archaeomythology. She's the editor of The Civilization of the Goddess by Marija Gimbutas and The Realm of the Ancestors, an anthology in honor of Marija Gimbutas. She worked closely with Marija Gimbutas as her personal editor from 1987 to 1994 and lectures internationally on Marija Gimbutas's life and work. Joan initiated courses in archaeomythology at 2 graduate schools in San Francisco. So again, you can read Joan's full bio at our website. And I just want to hand the mic over to Heide and Joan so they can jump right into this very amazing and exciting topic. So I'm not sure who will go first. So please, I'm going to turn that over to you, and Diane will be our timekeeper, and she will let you know when you have 1 minute if you've come close to the end. All right? Who's going to go first?
I don't mind if you want to go first, Joan.
Are you saying you would prefer to go first?
No, you. I don't mind if you go first.
Okay. I just want to say to everyone that I've come down with a very weird, I don't know what it is, but it's in my throat and my lungs and so it's a little, I feel a little bit surreal today. Plus, all of my notes have completely vanished. And it was a very, very strange evening. So losing all my notes is very bothersome to me, but we'll just have to play it by ear. Yeah, so the beginning, the introduction, the background, and personal relationships with Heide. I'll just say first, just to kind of introduce myself a little further, is that my work with Marija Gimbutas was very, very special for me. And she was not well a lot of the time that we were working together. And so suddenly she would say, oh, that I have to go, and that she would have me go and lecture for her, which was always a big surprise. But it was really, really a way to learn very quickly about the material and to use all of her slides and everything. So that gave me the access to go to places in the world. I mean, there was a huge, there's a huge, should we say, time for me to be in Germany, all through Germany, because the women were so enthusiastic about seeing Maria. They weren't enthusiastic necessarily about seeing me, but they were very kind and they were very happy to see all of the slides that I brought. So things went well. But during that time, I realized I hadn't met Heide, but I'd heard all kinds of things about her, and I really wanted I wanted to meet her. And so a dear friend of mine who is also part of the salon, the salons that I was doing by the name of Ginster. Do you know Ginster, don't you? Yeah. And she must have called you and arranged the time, and she actually drove me all the way up through this beautiful, beautiful landscape to finally get to where Heide was. And this, I have to say, was more than 30 years ago. So we have a history. We have a history, and that history began for me not only being in having the opportunity to meet so many amazing women in Germany who were very, very connected to Maria and very curious and so on, but also basically to meet Heide and the experience of going there and seeing and having it unfold the beautiful location that where you've been all these years, and what you've created is really a place for women. And it exudes that brilliance and exudes that connection with the living world. And I was so taken by that. And it was just a phenomenal experience, and to be walked out into the gardens and so on, and just to see how you lived and what you did. So that was the beginning of our collaboration, various kinds of collaborations, because you would ask me to prepare pieces for your gatherings with your own people, and that was really marvelous for me. But one thing that I realized is that I have a copy of this revision journal. I don't know if you can see it. Can you maybe have to move this over for a while? And this was done about 30 years ago, kind of right in that same period. And I was one of the executive editors of Revision, and I had the opportunity then to uh, do whatever I wanted in terms of creating very special events for this. I'm sorry, I'm getting my mouth is a little bit. But in reading it, I hadn't read it in a long, long time. And what it was there, it's like, here we were. And I knew that I wanted to interview Heide, particularly because I heard from her that she was going to be going to the United States to show her the translation of one of her recent books. And I just thought, well, I'm in the epicenter of the women's spirituality movement there. I'm teaching it to graduate schools and working on radio, and I have this contact with everybody. And I thought, wow, these women would be so happy to meet Heide. And so things kind of worked out. And I don't know, Heide, if you remember some of the experiences that you had once you got to California and you got to meet the women. And can you tell us anything about that period?
Yeah, sure, Joan. I would like
Well, I get water.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
You are my first American friend.
Oh,
I
wow.
have to say this openly. It's the first one of the American, very interesting American women from the US whom I met. And you mentioned some of our meetings, but I have to mention some more. It's true. From the very beginning I had the good luck that you supported my work really from the very beginning. You did what you could to support matriarchal studies generously and without any expectation from me. You did it from the very beginning, Joan. It was I came to the US, to California, and you opened the doors of some meetings, some events for me, so that I can speak about my research and the program of my research. It was really great what you did for me. And you spread it by radio, and at once we had a full audience. Radio was really a wonderful tool to do
Yeah.
this. It was wonderful. And our friendship went on and on. You were several times at the Academy Hagia, and
Yes.
it was great for the German women to come here and to listen to you and to your wonderful presentations of Marija Gimbutas' work. Yes, revision was one of these parts of your supportive attitude to all my work. And I remember I like to remember the first conference in Greece in 1988. They invited me, and I could meet several very interesting women from the US. We went to Turkey, and we were speaking there, and you made a very strong support for the Turkish women who were offended. It was Shilan Orhun. She was offended by anti-feminist attitudes, and you really were strong to criticize the mayor and what happened there. It was really wonderful. Throughout all these many years, you supported modern matriarchal studies, and I'm very grateful to you. You opened for me the door in the US so that I could speak and talk to women in North America. Thank you so much, Joan. I want to say this from all my heart, how much you did for this work.
Well, it was great for me too. I mean, to have that opportunity. But I'd like you to say something more about those amazing events in Germany, but I think also some other places in Europe that were celebrating the expansion of the work that you were doing. And I don't recall now the names of them. I know that I was presenting at several of them, but it was a long time ago. So do you remember those really special events that were presented? Some of them.
I don't know what you mean. I remember the last year when we met.
So we're about maybe the next time.
And about the life of Marija Gimbutas, and I gave a political speech. This was the last event, but in between there were many other events.
There were many events. Yeah.
And we always presented, luckily, how close the work of Marija Gimbutas, which you presented brilliantly, and my work was, and I think very many women got it, how much it belonged together.
Yeah. Well, it was really wonderful, and I was thinking that it would be a really good thing if somehow I could have this article available to women, and because it's really an amazing compilation of both of our statements. I mean, and it seems like it was just yesterday. And one thing I'm wondering, and I think that next time we meet and that we have an opportunity to speak about what is in this, that it seems very contemporary, I'm just wondering, well, 30 years later, what is it that you were doing and thinking and developing from all of these things that we were speaking about? And so once you have a copy, I mean, I think you had one, but you had to,
I have one, yes.
You had one, but you have to get another one. Really, there are things that I think when we are together next time, that I can ask you about this, because having the opportunity then to have a discussion face to face, and that was one of the things that was really good about this. And I thought that this was that this was actually an interview that I did for the purpose of this journal. And then at the end, it says that this is part of a longer piece that was actually done at Hagia. And I, of course, I didn't remember that and how much longer it is and what else we said and so on. But I don't know if you remember anything about that period. But the
No.
content, it's the thing that really gets me. The content of what we were saying, and particularly what you were saying about your work, was really remarkable.
We can have this conversation very soon, Joan, this year in Rome, for example.
Oh, yes, that's right. We can.
have
Yes.
the possibility to go to the Rome conference, and then we can continue our conversation face to face.
Well, then
And
I'll
when-
take
Yeah.
one to you. I'll take one of these to you. Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Mhm.
Could you send it once again to me? I do not know.
That's the first 10 minutes.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Diane.
That's the first 10 minutes.
Okay. And we're kind of combining the two, or I just now turned it over to Heide for hers. Yeah.
Turn it over to Heide.
Okay. Turned it over to Heide. I'm happy to do that. It's wonderful to speak with you, Heide.
But
To be continued.
yeah,
What's about now?
Now it's your
So-
turn to speak.
Heidi, just your introduction.
But I already did it.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I can make more introduction if you want to have more about it. Yeah, I just mentioned my meetings with Joan, which were really very interesting for me. And I was in the midst of my work when we met 30 years ago. And then we realized, you, Joan, and me, how close the work is we did. The work of Marija Gimbutas, which you represented, and my work with Modern Matriarchal Studies, which was at this time just unfolding and yes, so advanced. But I already mentioned the many opportunities when I met you, Joan, and of course, how much you supported in the beginning in the US, the work of Modern Matriarchal Studies, really generously and selflessness. Yeah.
Thank you.
I met you several times in your parents' home where we met,
Yes.
and I met you in the wonderful rose garden later, and saw your farm and your restaurant, all these things. I think 30 years, it is filled with meetings and many memories, and very good way of collaboration, for which I'm very grateful. But I already said things before. I have no longer introduction to say now for now.
Well, we will have a chance to elaborate on some of these issues that in reading this issue, I can see that it would be really, really great to have some questions about where have you gone from here? Where have you gone from here? And what are some of the answers to some of the questions, that were posed then? And we can do that. So that's good.
Yes, sure. I hope some of this, what you are just suggesting, will happen when we discuss these different points of your work and my work. And, okay, we can continue in Rome.
Good. Now I'm going to have to get some water, so please carry on with your presentation, and I will be right back.
So Heidi, we're going to move on to the next topic of terminology, and that would be really helpful.
Yeah, I can start and Joan can continue. Okay, maybe some parts of this are more dialogue and not only 10 minutes for her and for me. Okay. My work with Modern Matriarchal Studies started very early on with trying to find out how are the criteria of matriarchies. This means to find the criteria of a valid definition. I started with the first draft of this definition already in 1978 in Germany. And then I continued. Of course, I was reading lots of anthropological literature, and I had to read between the lines, for this literature is patriarchally biased, surely. And later I went on to meet indigenous people, the Mozo, who have these patterns. And I was very lucky to talk to them and to talk more and more to women and men from indigenous societies who have these patterns in their societies. So I could always test this definition and put more and more empirical content into it. For a scientific definition has to be based on empirical content and not just a fanciful thing. So both sides of my research, reading literature and having conversations and many talks to indigenous peoples from the societies, I brought it together and synthesized it so that I could see what this form of society really is. For what I met before were their prejudices and their wrong ideas, like the wrong idea that is women's rule, domination of women is always the same thing. But this is not only a prejudice. I think this is a way how academics and other people who are clinging to the patriarchal worldview try to prevent women and other people to research this topic more closely. So this was hard work and long work, but it sounds so easy to have a definition, but to have a definition which is based on a lot of empirical content is quite a different thing. Then you have to research these societies by literature and by conversation with these people to find out what are the criteria and how these criteria work together to make the whole of a society a functioning society. And I was so much excited by these patterns because they present a whole completely different world and a completely different model of which we are not thinking before. For in our school education, we are trained in the patriarchal worldview and don't hear anything about different models of life and of society. Okay, this was my work with this definition, and I have chosen this term, matriarchy. I made it at first in the work of Robert Graves, Greek mythology, which is much more than Greek mythology, because he showed in his analysis of the mythology that behind these patriarchal stories is a different worldview, which is based on a great variety of goddesses and a completely different worldview. And he openly labeled it matriarchy. I was intrigued by this term, and I could never get rid of it. And also in the German translation of his work, the word matriarchy was used. So I learned for the first time it exists, something like that exists. So I continued to search everywhere in the different libraries of the different faculties what this is, this matriarchy. Okay, I found a lot, of course, under different terms, under different labels, but I continued and I found a lot. And as I said before, like a puzzle, I could put together all these pieces for this topic, and this form of society and the research about it is scattered, completely scattered. No one did theorizing about it. No one put it on a scientific ground. No one. It was scattered and buried under a lot of material, a lot of prejudices, a lot of, how to say this, a lot of patriarchal dust. And I had to put this away. But these were my beginning years to develop this definition, and all the time, all the years, as long as I was working with this topic matriarchy and modern matriarchy, I was always testing this definition to make it clearer, to make it broader, not too broad and not too narrow, to make it adequate to what I was doing. So it's a journey of knowledge and of testing. for I don't want to be trapped by fantasy. So this is my introduction to this, and I insist on this term by several reasons. For it's a scientific process that you take up terms which are not well defined, and you then in a long process you define it in a scientifically way, and then it can be used because it has been in a new way formulated and defined. And I think the term matriarchy is so important for women of today, because behind this term, a whole world of a different model of life opens up. And the other point why I cling to this term, even if I was attacked in all these things, because I use it, the other point is it's a political term. You can very easily make your experience how political it is if you use it. And then you will have reactions. If you use it, just use it. You will have, with your friends, your relatives, and so on, you will have reactions. Everybody knows this term. It's known. It's a term of everyday language, not an artificial term. It's a known term. But the reactions are very interesting. Some are very enthusiastic, and others are upset if you use it. So you see there is some content in it, which is important, which is intriguing people, which is making people interested in positive or negative way. And this is just the political content, which is in this term included. So it was a double way which I have chosen from the very beginning, putting it in a scientific form, in a really scientific form, and I'm happy to have the tools for this by my study of philosophy of science. And the other way, to bring its political content more and more to the light, to formulate more and more what it means politically. And this means politically in our days, which need matriarchy. Okay, I finished for now. That's what I wanted to say at the beginning. Yes.
Well, if you don't mind my just inserting something about this, because this is one of the questions that I definitely wanted to ask you, because I knew that you were going to be coming. I was going to be introducing you to people in California, and not all of them would know about matriarchy, and also I wanted to ask you, which I did, what about matriarchy? Isn't it rather provoking? And you made this marvelous statement that that you aim to provoke. Can you say something about that? Because I think that when I read it, I said, "Oh, there it is. Yes, there's the statement." And there were other really strong statements that you made, but they were also in good humor. But still, they were speaking about your relationship to the material. So, what did you mean when you said that you aim to provoke?
Oh, this is a little bit a joke, but every joke has a serious core, you know. I just described it a little bit. If you use this term and people don't know what it is, then you will have these reactions and you are regarded as provocative. No? But this is only one point. Well, I thought this hints at its political context. It hints at the idea that not all the time we had universal patriarchy from the very beginning of time. It hints at this. And so people are reacting. But the reactions of the people are interesting, and they describe the people. Meanwhile, I don't want to be provocative, but it is in our times, in our patriarchal times, in our patriarchal mindset, in our brainwashed mindset for all the people, it is provocative, even if you don't want to be provocative. So in this sense, I said it was a joke, but it's not really a joke. For my main work is to put it in a serious scientific way and to continue with a scientific, well-defined term. If it's provocative, I think it's not my problem. It's the problem of the other people who find this term provocative. So, short answer. I hope it's a short answer.
Oh, no, this is fine
comment.
because um, just to let you know, I have found that not only all of my materials are gone, and so what I have was I have what I was really secretly wanting, but I didn't know if we would ever do it, to have another discussion, the two of us, and to ask you questions of what you have prepared, and then I can come back and since all of my preparations are completely not here, which is very disturbing to me because I worked very hard on it, of course. But so if that's all right with you, then we can continue and we can have a connection through our discussion with this material.
May I say something, Joan?
Yes.
I understand Marija Gimbutas very well, why she has chosen in the terminology the term matristic. I understand her very well. It was a different time when she wrote her work and researched it. And she is a generation before me. I'm a generation younger. So for her, it would have been too difficult and too dangerous to use the term matriarchy. So she has chosen the term matristic, which I understand quite well. But you gave at one of our work congresses, you gave a wonderful speech about this term, Joan. You said, if Marija Gimbutas had known how matriarchy is defined now, she would have nodded her head and said, it's the same what I mean.
Oh.
So from the content, there is no difference.
Well,
But
one of the things that came forth, and people will see this when they,
yes,
when they have a chance to, is that you were continually making connections between the work of Marija and the meaning of what you are doing too, because they sound very different. And one is meaning to provoke, whether it's a joke or not a joke. But to see the continuities that are there, and then to examine, well, what is different about it? What really is different about it? And that's one thing that I definitely would like to continue to explore with you. I about Marija and her relationship with oh, I don't know what that is, but anyway, I want to tell a little bit of a story, if that's all right with you, about the situation. Is that I saw some years ago, it was, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago, 10 years ago, everything flows together, that Ian Hodder, who at that time was the director of Çatalhöyük, a rather prestigious position, and basically he wrote that he was looking for evidence of male dominance, but he couldn't find it. He couldn't find it. And so then he said, well, that means that there was an equality between men and women. And this proves Marija Gimbutas wrong. And I thought, that kind of got me going, And so he thought that she was saying that she thought that it was matriarchy, but she never did say that. In fact, she was very clear over and over again why she didn't use the term. Even though I do have to say, parenthetically, the first two books, which were really the same book repeated, that she did use matriarchy, but she hadn't really thought it through well until, I mean, so when she finally figured out what she wanted to do, then she didn't, and then she made sure that she talked about it. So I thought, okay, he thinks that he has proved her wrong because he's not reading her work. He doesn't know what she's saying. And that, so I said, okay, so I called him up very nicely, and I would love to come and interview you, and I'll bring all my equipment, and I have this, I can put it in the Journal of Archaeomythology and blah, blah, blah. Oh, yes, that's fine. Okay, so I went down there and I was a little bit fuming, but I tried not to be rude. And then I said, all right, well, let's cut to the chase. The reason I'm here is because I found it very troubling that you had accused Marija of being wrong. And actually, she's not wrong because she wasn't saying it was matriarchy. So what happened? And he was like, oh, well, Um, then he finally admitted that, and I can say this now because uh, it was published. Everything is published and everything is out in the open. And I made sure that I sent everything to him and make sure that he was okay with it. Um, but he said that he had not read her work since he was an undergraduate. And that surprised me, because these guys have really high positions and they think that they can do anything and say anything. And so we talked about that, and he was basically saying that, well, maybe I was thinking too much about these other people and basically making himself like he doesn't know anything, but he's following everybody else, who's saying that it's matriarchy. And so this to me was a real sign that people who are in prestigious positions and they're making these bold statements doesn't mean that they know what they're talking about,
They don't know, really.
Yeah. So I wanted to tell that story because that's one of the reasons that Marija doesn't use it, because she sees that over and over again, people who are against the idea of matriarchy and who are against the idea of women having any kind of power or prestige or being able to function in a very high level, that they want to, put them down. And that's something that happens very often. And so she wanted to make sure that people did not think that she was making a distinction between men and women in that pejorative way. That was the misreading of it that they continue to do. So I don't know if you had any experience with that kind of thing, and what if so, what kind of impulse do you have around it, and what can you say for other folks who find that there are still prejudices that are very strong?
Yes, I think the academic institutions, they are a stronghold of the patriarchal worldview. And they cling so much to their old paradigm, they will not open to these new topics. What your talk showed me, which I experience very often, you can use matriarchy or matristic or matrifocal. You are always put in the same pot. Yeah. If you use matristic, the suspicion is you mean matriarchy. So every word which starts with matri, every word is dangerous for this patriarchal worldview. So it doesn't make much difference if you use matrifocal, matristic, or something else. You can use matriarchy from the very beginning. I was remembering a saying of Mary Daly, who said, if we do the first step and are punished for it, then we can also do the second and third step. This is the same with this terminology.
Very funny, very funny.
Yeah. And this point with men and women, I always try to teach my students and everyone who is willing to listen to me is that the topic matriarchy is not about men and women. It is about a whole society, a societal form, which is, of course, different from patriarchy. But a society includes men and women, includes old and young, includes even non-human nature. And we have to look how are people and how act people in matriarchy, men and women, how act matriarchal women, how act matriarchal men. And on the contrary, we have patriarchal men and patriarchalized women. It's about two different models of society and not about men and women. I always I'm preaching this, but yes, I do my best to overcome this. Now let me add a little bit to the story with Jan Hodder, because I have also a story with Jan Hodder. It's very interesting how it is with him. Yes, he has this wonderful article proving with his archaeological skills and a lot of methods that in Çatalhöyük, men and women lived on equal levels, equal terms. So his conclusion was, then it cannot be a matriarchy. Sure, okay, it's a wrong idea. I wrote an article as an answer to his point, proving that he has proven that it is a matriarchy as an egalitarian society. And one of my friends, I think it was Lydia Rule, was so kind to send my article to him. Of course, I had not a direct conversation like you had with him, Joan, but he read my article, but I never get an answer. Sure, I never get an answer, sure. But now it has continued. A recent research on Çatalhöyük showed, a DNA research showed that on Çatalhöyük we had the mother line in Çatalhöyük. Okay? And now the result, the consequence, or the idea of these researchers is, oh, they had the mother line, oh, then it is a matriarchy. In the idea that now women are ruling. It's wrong from the very beginning. If you put it in this way or in that way, it is wrong. And they are reluctant to take into account critical research and new research, which would give them a little bit more enlightenment about this term. So they didn't want to read Gimbutas' work, and of course not at all mine, because I'm speaking openly about matriarchy. But I personally don't worry any longer about it, because the academic institution and all this school system is based on the idea of patriarchy forever and everywhere. And I personally don't waste my energy to argue against them. I continue with my work, and it's well accepted from many other people. So Marija Gimbutas' work too, by your continuous and tireless work for it.
Well, I want to ask you, because you've many times talked about the great similarities between matriarchy and Marija's work. How would you define the differences between them if you really get down to the details? And at the same time, how would women who are embracing matriarchy, do they see a difference between what Marija has chosen? There must be, not everybody's the same. So what is that? Yeah.
I think we can elaborate the differences with the next topics, with paradigm and so on. So it's clearer. This terminology, it's a topic of its own, but in the following topic, it can be made, the difference can be made clearer, if you don't mind.
I don't mind. I don't mind. Yeah. Well, so when we get there, I look
about
forward.
Paradigms. Should we talk more about paradigms?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. But since I have no notes now, I would have to have you begin each one of them, and then I can.
Sure. Then we can continue with our dialogue.
Yes,
okay.
Yes. I'm very happy that we have a dialogue.
It's better than 10 speeches, a speech of 10 minutes and the other one. No, I like to have it in a dialogue with you, Joan. About paradigms, I want to bring my ideas about this topic paradigm. You usually, and also your friends, call it the Gimbutas paradigm. And when you compare what is usually going on in archaeology, it's a paradigm, because it changes our idea about history completely. And this is what paradigms do. They change our worldview in a deep way. And Marija did it with her archaeological work. She changed the paradigm of European history completely, which has consequences. But I was a little bit, I felt not so easy with the term Gimbutas paradigm. For this paradigm, which she is using as a theoretic framework for her work, was well known to me from the very beginning of when I was a child in primary school. I was born and grew up in what was then East Germany Republic, which was under Soviet, how to say it, under Soviet protectorate, and we learned very early at school the Marxist theory of society and of history. So already in primary school, my consciousness, I learned about different forms of society and how important societal issues are. Of course, I didn't get so much about Marxist ideology, but I learned about this and my awareness was sharpened for society and societal forms. And this paradigm is a Marxist paradigm that before patriarchy, there existed another period which was non-patriarchal or even matriarchal. This is common sense or common teaching in Marxist theory. And I learned it very early. So this is a Marxist paradigm, if you allow me to. And Marija had a similar, I think in some respect, a similar childhood. She comes from the Baltic area, which was also under Soviet and Marxist influence. She had the same paradigm in mind. And her wonderful work was that she proved that this paradigm is true in regard to Old Europe, Southeast Europe. She proved it in her archaeological way. So this is what I could not follow so easily, that this should be the Gimbutas paradigm. It's the Marxist paradigm of history. And I was not influenced by her in this sense, for I worked on my own way, parallel to her research. And later by you, I learned about her by your work. So I could not go on with this term Gimbutas paradigm, for it's the Marxist paradigm. And everyone who knows a little bit about Marxist theory knows that this is the Marxist idea of history. It comes from Friedrich Engels, the Marxist philosopher, Marxist German philosopher Friedrich Engels, and he based this Marxist paradigm of history on the work of the Swiss scholar Johann Jakob Bachhofen, who at first brought out that before this patriarchy period, we had a period of mother right. He calls it mother right. And Engels took it up and formed the Marxist theory of history about it with the early period, which was not patriarchal. And of course, Marija on her way and on my way, it was parallel. We didn't know from each other in these times, but parallel, we continued on this way with the Marxist paradigm. This is what I want. These are my thoughts to this topic. And looking forward to hear what you want to say.
Well, the only thing I would say about that, because we have the same feeling about not having the Gimbutas paradigm, and what I've seen is that anything that is Gimbutas something something something, it's a way of of saying don't go there, or I mean, it's amazing to me. It's just totally amazing to me that this, well, maybe things are changing a little bit because of some of the findings, you know, that have shown that Marija's work really is true. I mean, it's very, very helpful to have all of this this new scientific work that shows that what she was saying early on is come to be shown is correct. And even Colin Renfrew very kindly made the point to say that she was right about things that he had been very, very strongly criticizing her for. But to call it a paradigm, to call it a this or that or whatever it is, it's a name calling in that context, you know. And so she had to be very strong. I mean, I asked her, I did lots and lots of interviews with her, and a series that went particularly to be used for From the Realm of the Ancestors, which unfortunately she passed away before she could see it and see all of the really great people that were in the text, and a lot of them were her her dear colleagues. And basically in that text, there was such an awareness of attitudes, and that fortunately the attitudes of the people in this big volume are those that really loved her and they really cared about her, and they even if they had disagreements or whatever, it didn't matter. We can talk with each other and not have to agree with everything. And so that was the tenor of this publication. So there was something else I was going to say, but it kind of went off. But maybe if it comes back, I kind of make that connection. Yes. So the changes that are happening, the new paradigms that are coming into play, having to do with what the material that is being discovered through various means that are very, very important at this time, uh, showing that she was right. She was not just this little old lady who making up stories. And so that's something that is really great that's going on. And I would imagine I was glad to see that uh, some of the folks that are here are real colleagues of all of ours, I think. So um, it'd be nice if when we get together next time, if we can have a discussion and have other like a broader discussion, if that's possible, to see what other people have to say. But yeah, so where should we go from here?
Let me add just a thought, Joan. I think in the US, you and Marija, you were right to call it Gimbutas paradigm. For if you would have called it the Marxist paradigm, it would have been much more difficult to bring her work through.
Well, I'll think about that again. I have to.
Wanted to verify this, that it's much broader, a theoretical framework below this. This is the Marxist theory, which is fast spread. Okay, this is only a short comment to this.
No, thank you for that. Yeah, thank you for that. That's good. I'll definitely have to turn on that but actually it is the Gimbutas paradigm. So many things that were not, considered as real before, and now are being seen as really valuable. And she was really somebody who could speak, and through time, certain things appearing to justify what she was saying. And that's something really great.
I don't mind that you call it Gimbutas paradigm, and I continue to call my work, including the matriarchy paradigm, not I don't cling on my name. It's a matriarchy paradigm, and I'm well aware that the basis of this is a Marxist paradigm, but I also know how much the Marxist theory didn't mention. For example, the situation of women were not analyzed in this theory. So it's much more to call it matriarchy paradigm, for this includes what women did in history and in present days. Also, I know that one of the basic frameworks is this Marxist theory. But this Marxist theory has criticized by European women, feminist women, at length, because the omittance of all what women mean and what women do, and so on and so on. But anyway, it's interesting that even the idea that before patriarchy there existed a completely different period is included in the Marxist paradigm, and is spread everywhere where this theory is known and is read and discussed.
Are you talking about the old European material? Old European material? Is that what you're referring to, or not?
No, I'm referring to the philosophical background of these paradigms.
Ah, okay.
Around. But it's not, I think everyone can label his or her paradigm as he or she wants, no problem. We don't do name calling. But I only wanted to show from the history of thought and the history of developing theories where it comes from. This was my intention, nothing else.
I see.
Right. Should we continue and talk a little bit about methodology? What do you
Yes.
think? Okay. Do
Yes.
you want to start?
No, I told you that all of my notes are gone. So you
Well,
are my notes.
You can talk about,
Yeah.
you can talk by your heart from about Marija.
Yes, well, oh yes, of course. So, so you're not initiating. Why don't you initiate it, and then I will jump in.
Yeah, sure. You often mention the very fascinating methodology of Marija Gimbutas as archaeomythology.
Yes.
And this is a huge step forwards when we look what archaeologists usually do. They look at the materials they can find, which is mostly physical material, and to a big part they omit the worldview these people had. Of course, talking about worldview means interpretation of the finds they have, and interpretation is always difficult. And so Marija Gimbutas did a huge step forward by including or combining archaeological finds, which are material and worldview, by including the mythology.
Right, right.
This, we know very well, this made her colleagues quite furious, this method. But this method is necessary. How can we know about a completely societal model if we omit the biggest parts? What people think and what people believe, we cannot omit this. It's
Right.
impossible. A society does not exist only from material goods. But the problem for archaeologists is that they find only material goods, but they also find what Marija Gimbutas showed. They also find statues, they also find artifacts, and artifacts, statues, or inscriptions, they have meaning. And then the difficulties start. Marija was courageous enough to interpret these artifacts and signs which look like script. She interpreted, and so he put a very important level together. She included a very important level to interpret the society, and she interpreted the historical societies of old Europe and included the worldview. How can we understand a society when we omit the worldview? Yeah? This is what archaeologists do, and so much of their work, even if I admire their methods, but much of their work remains a little bit shallow or empty, or I don't know how to say that. You understand?
Yes, yes,
So, yeah.
yes.
This is one for me. Now, let me say what this is where I completely accept and find it very important what she did. Now, let me add where I see a difference. I think when we start to interpret a societal model which is completely different from our own, we cannot understand it completely by historical and archaeological facts alone. For these are relics, they are broken. We lack a clear interpretation, even if we can try. So even if I started my way as a historian of culture, I felt very soon that I cannot go on in this way. When I want to understand matriarchy, I cannot rely only on archaeological relics and interpretations that are always quite shaky. I have to look at the living societies of this kind. This created a long way for me, a long detour, if you want to say it like that, but it's not a detour, it was a basis for me to try to understand living matriarchal societies. And as I said before, I try to understand from literature, which is biased and not so easy, which you have always to analyze, and then from my meetings and encounters with women and men from these societies. And then I could learn how they really think how they do their politics, how they do their communication, how they put their societal patterns into action, in everyday action. We cannot see this from history alone. It's not possible. And this gave me a very good basis in understanding matriarchy. And from this basis of anthropology, of this anthropological research, I started to try to understand historical facts deeper. And here I again met Marija and was astonished how deeply she already understood the material she could have as an archaeologist. But I think it's necessary, if we want to really understand matriarchy, it's necessary to add the anthropological methodology. And of course, all what is combined with this, also sociology, and also, for example, to understand the rise of patriarchy, we have to add archaeogeology, or geography, and so on.
What was the last thing you said? We had to understand what? Would you say it again, please?
Archaeogeography. This means the changing of environment in history, which is very interesting and important to understand how patriarchy came about in the Eurasian steppes, who dried out and had desiccated, who dried out and changed into steppe and desert through several thousands of years, which was difficult for the human societies living there. So we have to include also scientific methods of natural science, like archaeogeography. This is what I meant. So I think we have to spread and to include more disciplines of knowledge into this difficult matter understanding matriarchy than Marija could do at her time. Of course, I'm not archaeologist. She did wonderful work as archaeologist, what I cannot do. But anyway, my field was to include more and more other fields like anthropology and sociology and so on, to understand matriarchy always deeper and deeper. This is a difference, an intersection, where I appreciate her archaeomythology method, and a difference because I was spreading and including more and more methods.
Well, of course, Marija was very, very keen on the significance of being interdisciplinary. And she was interdisciplinary from the time she was a child. I mean, studying in Vilnius, because and also in Kaunas too. But this sense that there's a long, long, long history of knowledge, and that you cannot learn as much as you need to learn just by one direction. You have to be interdisciplinary. You have to be able to weave it together and to know that it's a complex connection that you have to have. And so fortunately, she received that kind of training and she continued it. And she also found that many of her colleagues were not willing to accept that because of certain prejudices about what is considered real learning and what is real science and what could not be science if you have archaeomythology. Mythology is a lie, right? And all of those things that really have to be opened out so that there's so many things that are encoded in that rejection that keep scholars from being as broad as they can. So I think that there is change happening. I think that there is movement in the right direction, but it takes a long time. Yeah. So in terms of they're getting back to looking at archaeomythology and getting back and looking at matriarchy. There's very often this sense that matriarchy is more rigid somehow than matrifocal, matrilineal. It has that kind of quality that is projected to it, or that it seems that way. can you say anything about matriarchy? I mean, do you see it as being more rigid or more, or is there what do you find is in the nature of it? That
Let me say some words about interdisciplinarity. Sure.
Okay.
The research, the modern matriarchal research studies are based on two pillars. One is, of course, criticism of ideology, of patriarchal ideology, what Marija Gimbutas also did, and the other is interdisciplinarity. For how could we understand the whole world of other society without without using interdisciplinarity?
Right.
And this was well understood by Marija Gimbutas, and so she was very keen and did it. But you see, this is also very provocative to academia thinking. The academic thinking, you have to be in your field, and to stay in your field, and you have to specialize. So we have today a super specialization, which prevents us, again, to understand a whole different form of society. For then the material knowledge is cut into pieces and put in different disciplines. I say it very easily. So how can you understand then connections, cohesions, when you deal with science in that way? So interdisciplinarity can be used very broadly or very narrowly. When they talk in academia about interdisciplinary, it's usually in a very narrow way. But Marija Gimbutas did not do this. She broke a rule. She broke an academic rule, not to be too keen with interdisciplinarity. Okay, and but it doesn't help. And she did it wonderful. And so we have good knowledge about what she was researching. And I continue in this way, for I know how many disciplines we need to understand not only a complex form of society like matriarchy, but also a huge, difficult historical process as the rise of patriarchy. How do we want to understand it when our knowledge is cut into pieces and put in different disciplines? It disappears. Then it disappears. And this is what the academia wants. This unwanted topic should disappear. So you cut it into pieces, put it in disciplines, and then you forbid that other people transgress the boundaries of the disciplines. Yeah, but she did it, and this is wonderful that she did it. And as I described just before, I go on with this and include many more disciplines at every point where I see or feel here it is needed. And I'm very glad for my background as philosopher of science allows me to go easily into other disciplines and see what they are doing with argumentation and theoretizing. I'm trained to look through this. So I'm lucky to see this, and I can put it together. Now to your question, Joan, more rigid. No, it's not about rigid. It's not about being more or less rigid. Matriarchy is to be researched on the levels each society has, on all the levels: worldview, politics, societal forms, and economy. This is what I mean with matriarchy, to look at each level which is included in the society to understand the whole, and then to understand how these different levels are combined and work together in the mindset of the matriarchal people. This is what I do. This has nothing to do with being more rigid or not. I think Marija was very rigid, and I'm also very rigid.
How do you see that she was rigid in the same way you're rigid? I mean, how would you compare?
I think the idea that I'm more rigid comes because I continue to use the term matriarchy.
Oh, I see.
Yes, people think it's very, very rigid. Of course, it is. It's provocative.
Well, I wanted to say something about interdisciplinary approach, because Marija was very eloquent in speaking about it, and she made analogies with with people who who have their little area of research. and it has its own terminology, and it has its own way of speaking. It has its own, all of those things that make up that, whatever it is that they are all doing. And what she would say over and over again is that it's important for scholars not to be separated, not to separate themselves into their little clans or their little whatever you want to call it, but to know that everyone has to learn from everyone else, and that if you have your own way of seeing the world and way of doing things, and you hold it very close because that's your identity also. Speaking of rigid, that maintains a rigidity as part of the whole pattern. And she was really doing all she could to break up that rigidity and to encourage people to step outside of their box and to speak with each other. I mean, that's why she was one of the co-founders of the Journal of Interdisciplinary, no, what is it? Help someone. It's still going on right now, and it's basically, I'm sorry, I've one of those senior moments of, I forgot the name of, but maybe you know what it is, because it's basically a very, very important journal that's been going on for quite a while, that she was one of the founders of, and she wanted the people who contributed to this journal to basically listen to each other and have their own way of communicating with each other, and not to just do their little thing and then go away. And apparently it's hard for people to be less rigid if they feel more comfortable that way. And I haven't been I have allowed my subscription to lapse, and I should go back and see what's there now. But she really, really tried, and she formed lots of uh, lots of big events, and brought people from different disciplines together, and to try to have people think of listening to each other and speaking in a new voice, basically, and sharing the voice that they had, and listening to the voice of others, and know that they don't have to be separated from each other. They can be, intertwined. So perhaps that was something of what you were referring to, is that breadth, that broadness, and that intention to encourage each other, not just to be separate, but to know that there are ways to learn from each other, and if people aren't learning from each other, then they remain static. So
that's true. And it's so easily to say with modern matriarchal studies or how it's done. But you see, I appreciate with learning from others. It's not possible to write one book in modern matriarchal studies without learning a lot from others. So I also learned from Marija Gimbutas about her archaeological research. I learned from many, I read a lot of things and had discussions with different scholars. And I had a lot of discussions with indigenous peoples, and I was learning. And bringing it together, my work is bringing it together, but this learning from others is basic for this. No one can write history anew alone, or describe a completely different model of society alone, sure. And she did it, and I do it also in my way. For example, we brought together these 3 world congresses on matriarchal studies. It was to bring together everyone who was working in this field, labeling it matriarchy or not, it doesn't matter, but bringing them together that I can learn from them and they can learn from each other. We did it with these world congresses. This was the aim and the goal and the purpose of these congresses, to bring people together. And they came from different disciplines, from different continents, from different societal forms. Yeah, completely different. And we could learn from each other. Otherwise, it's not possible to promote a new paradigm. And Marija did this in her way and with her possibilities, I did it with my possibilities to promote this paradigm and to create a community where we all can learn from each other. So thank you. And so I don't understand what this term means. Matriarchy is more rigid or I'm more rigid. I don't understand this.
Well, it's just,
understand.
it's not a judgment here. It's just, it's something that I was interested to know from you what you
As
think
I said
about it.
before, I think I'm labeled to be more rigid because I insist on the word matriarchy. I think this term is so important in political respect. This is all.
Uh-huh.
But as a scholar or a scientific working woman, I'm open to all what I can learn from others. Sure. And I learned also from Marija Gimbutas, for she is an archaeologist, and she brought this material to light, which we need so much. But now we come to, I guess we come to the next point, the scope of field of research. And there you can see also the differences between her work and mine.
Right.
You want to start?
Well, that can be investigated in a number of different ways. And one of the things I want to ask you about, which is it's kind of a stretch, I suppose, to speak about this in terms of the well, let me just put it this way. I'm just going to backtrack a little bit and say something I was going to say before and just kind of try to bring it all together. I was very, very happy years ago when you began to speak about the necessity, and I was speaking about the necessity also of your really making alliances with Indigenous women and inviting them to your events and to hearing what they have to say about their own experience, their own lived experience, and what similarities they might have and differences too in terms of their concept of archaeomythology and their concepts of matriarchy. And some of the problems can be that, yes, that can be that when you're speaking a different language, then you have to translate. And is that translation similar enough to what you mean? Because it gets very complicated. So, were you going to say something? Because suddenly Heide left and, oh, okay. Suddenly, yeah. So, do you know what I'm reaching toward is basically finding the commonalities is a little tricky when you are speaking different languages and you want to find the place where those different languages can actually come together and how much can you take in? I mean, I have that problem myself. I'm not a polyglot by any means, but and I know that in your work with people speaking different languages, there must be always this sense of what is the real meaning that's being expressed here.
Sure. This is always difficult when you have conversation with indigenous people. They speak surely a different language, even if they use English like I try to do, but the meaning of their terms are different. So, but this is not so a big problem for my work, for I do not work as a real anthropologist who has to go in every detail and understanding every detail of a different society where he or she is not born in. I work as a theoretician, that makes a little bit a difference. I do not want to understand for example, each point of a ritual which they are celebrating, because I cannot understand it deeply enough. I work more theoretically. I work with the patterns, the underlying patterns of the society, which are can be found everywhere in these societies, which I call matriarchal. And these patterns I do not need to go in every detail of the everyday life or the conversation or the rituals. This is the task of anthropologists, and they have the problem with different languages. For me, it's more about structures which are underlying in their societies. And these structures you can recognize by the talking, but also observing their behavior and by looking how they manage their things together, then you see it. And also about their political statements, for example, you can see it very clearly. I had it with Mozo when they talk to us, oh, we have lost our political autonomy, for we have Chinese functionaries here. That's okay, they have a different political pattern, and then they describe it. It's, for me, it's in some respect easier to understand them than it is for an anthropologist who is a true anthropologist. This I would like to add. And for I'm working cross-culturally with these societies, and it helps me when I find the same patterns or similarities in another one. This confirms what I have found out by one of them, and the next one again has similar patterns. It's easier for me for this cross-cultural research, finding out structures, does not demand from me that I understand every point of the language, every point of the rituals, and so on and so on and so on. But anyway, I have to be in contact and asking if they mean it in this way and that way. You have to continue this dialogue anyway. So that's what I want to say as comment to this.
That's true.
What do you think? Should we now talk about point 5, about scope of fields of research of Marija and Modern Matriarchal Studies? But if you want to add, I will not interrupt you.
No, that's okay. I think that I'm having a little bit of a.
You're happy that you could come to us today.
I didn't know if I could actually do it, but I'm glad to be here. I'm sorry, would you repeat the question again? That
It was my question if we now should start with point 5 of our
number 5.
dialogue about
the fields.
Research. Then we can see very clearly the differences. Even if the differences are no contradictions, it's combined. Yeah? But we see the differences very clearly. Would you like to start, or what do you think?
Well, since I'm having trouble speaking right now, once again, I would appreciate it if you began, and then I will see if I can kind of bring myself around. Excuse me.
I mentioned it already a little bit with talking about methodology, that different fields of research coming together in the studies of in modern matriarchal studies. And I mentioned from the very beginning, I opened up the program of modern matriarchal studies, and I remember that I could do it at when you invited me in the beginning in California. I presented not so much detailed research, but the program of this research. This means the scope of the fields of research, which I try to fulfill step by learning from others, and others are also included in doing this work. Yes, the scope of the field of research of modern matriarchal studies is, at first you have to look what is the history of this research, starting from Backofen, from the Marxist, and so on. And then you are astonished how much things are there, how much you can find, and how heavily it's again interrupted and buried. Okay, I did this, brought it to light again, this history of this research, which is important, for we have to know from which point we are starting today. This is one important field, and this is usually this is a custom among scholars and scientists to show what was before, and then to show from which point you are starting. Yes, and then I think to this modern matriarchal studies belongs knowledge about matriarchal societies of our present days, the contemporary matriarchal societies, as many as we can meet. And this is in process, for I cannot see them all, but I presented already a range of them. But maybe there are many more, so younger scholars can continue. I would be happy. And then, from this knowledge, which we can draw from living matriarchal societies, to look closely into the history. And now the archaeological field comes in. Marija Gimbutas has a prominent place in this, and other archaeological research. For this research is worldwide. It is not confined to Europe or some parts of West Asia. It's worldwide. So when I published my first book, I wrote studies on indigenous cultures across the globe, for I included them from Africa, East Asia, America, wherever I could find them. And when we look in history, what Marija did, and what in my eyes, the Marxian paradigm is, his matriarchal history is also worldwide. We have worldwide a long period of matriarchal history, and later patriarchy came. And this history is also buried. We have to research it and find it out in every continent. I started with my book on history with West Asia and Europe, heavily relying on the work of Marija Gimbutas too, but I want to continue. What about the matriarchal history in Africa, which is just below the surface? It's very close under the surface, in Asia, in both Americas. And when we have to find this out, we have to explain how it came in every continent to patriarchy. For today, we have in every continent, more or less, older or not so old, patriarchy. And we have to explain it in a different way for every continent. For there doesn't exist one explanation for all these different culture, regions, continents, and times. It doesn't exist. We have to research it separately to understand what happened there and why patriarchy spread. It's not a matter of course. Why could it spread worldwide? This is also a topic of matriarchy, of modern matriarchal studies, and we have to show how this matriarchal, very long period and rich cultures of the matriarchal period all around the world, this did not disappear at once. It continued in subcultures, in marginalized cultures, in forgotten cultures. It continued like an understream, an undercurrent under the dominating patriarchal paradigm till today. And this is also a very interesting topic to find out where this undercurrent, we can bring it to light again. I did some research here in my own area, local and national, because I'm closer here, and brought to light what can be found of these older periods, and to show how it was used or misused in patriarchal times, but it never died out. And when we do, this is also a huge field. And when we bring this together, then we will have a completely different idea what history was and is. Completely different picture of this. This is a huge field. I cannot fulfill it all, but I took the initiative and brought some exemplary examples for all this, for living matriarchal societies, research which can continue. For history, I'm deeply involved in this now, and also what can we find out of the matriarchal undercurrent in patriarchal societies. I did also some work in my, as I said before, my area. This is a huge field.
Yes.
And in this field, a lot of wonderful research of other researchers, women and men, is to be included, and I try to include as much as I can. So I think the scope of research is much broader than Marija did, but she did it as an archaeologist, and you cannot research all over the world. But we have this broader framework in modern matriarchal studies, which opens up possibilities for a lot of other researchers, younger ones, other researchers, to step in and to elaborate more and more this scope of research and this paradigm. I see here a big difference, which is not a contradiction.
Well, I think it's really quite remarkable and wonderful that you're taking part in the study of what is in the underground. And of course, that's one thing that Maria was extremely interested in, the continuity of the old European material that would be repeated, maybe because the women weren't, taken seriously or whatever. Yeah, let them do their own little thing or whatever, and then it continues. And do you see that there are similarities in those patterns of the ceremonies and the practices that are part of that underground, uh, finding them underground and they continue? I mean, is there something that's keeping them there? Is there something that allows them to continue where otherwise they wouldn't continue? And is it mostly from women, for women that
Women also continued with many patterns which were silenced and which were made invisible, but which has still remaining patterns from earlier times, from matriarchal times.
Mhm.
Sure. What is a very interesting field is mythology. Mythology not read with these patriarchal overlayers, but read with its older message. Marija Gimbutas included the Baltic mythology, which was very important, and this mythology and its matriarchal contents continued in the Baltic area till today. I
right?
researched here German mythology and others and brought in and interpreted it again in a matriarchal way to show that this not understood formal things, folklore, mythology, customs, and so on, not understood, but still
Transmitted or something?
transmitted, has a matriarchal content which people don't know about it. I wrote some books in German about it and showed that the matriarchal content is still there, but not understood. And Maria did it also with mythology in the Baltic area. This is very important to bring it up, that matriarchal ideas and patterns and pictures, images have not died out completely, but it was put into the underground in our unconsciousness, and so, but it can brought to light again. This
But
is
you're so right that it's so powerful and so necessary to explore it, because Maria very often would say that the Balts were her uh, her ancestors, and that they had no written language, of course, but everything was verbal. So what was written down was not from them; it was from the the religious people who were trying to show, look at these crazy. Uh, uh, they called, what did they mostly call them? The uh, anyway, they were clearly these were people who were considered almost like savages because they're not worshiping the right God and so on and so forth. But there they were, and they were really preserving what they most felt that needed to be preserved. And sometimes they were very, very sharp about that preservation because they would tell the the uh, the people who would come and set up shop uh, in their sacred groves and say, "No, you cannot be here. You are polluting the sacred grove, and if you stay here, you try to stay here, we're going to cut your head off." And sure enough, they were martyred until they realized this is a serious matter. You cannot come and destroy what we hold most dear. Well, I mean, that's something that is
when we
passed
look,
on.
when we look closely at this big field which is called folklore, yeah, which is much more than folklore. When we look at this big field, we can see a lot of older pattern, and this makes again possible for us to make the connection between the early matriarchal period and epochs, which were buried under this patriarchy rising, and make the connection with all these folklore patterns, and to see that the same values and the same images and the same ideas are transmitted on and on and on.
Mm.
The main transmitters were women everywhere in every culture. This is very interesting. They cling to their goddesses even very long in patriarchal times. In Europe, then they were accused of being witches and they were burned and so on. But they continued with these goddess cults. You can see it easily how it went on. And I have a wonderful example from Germany. This is the goddess Frau Holle. I think in English is Mother Hulda. She was even venerated in the 19th century when the collectors started to collect what they call fairy tales, but these were not fairy tales, these were myths. Then they collected it, calling it fairy tales, making it fictitious, what they never were. The women who told them these myths were still believing in her. In the 19th century, it was not for them stories or fairy tales, it was for them a belief. So we have many examples how long it went on in every later patriarchal national state and so on, so everywhere. This is what I mean with subcultures or marginalized cultures, which we can bring to light again, which did not die out and which have their roots in the old matriarchal epoch. We can make the connection more and more.
Yes.
Many of my students like to research this material here in our area, also to research what I call landscape mythology. For you have many myths here which are connected with features in the landscape, and these myths very often show matriarchal characteristics, and you can combine it with a landscape which the people saw like in a symbolic way, like Mother Earth with her breasts and her lap. They like to do this research, and so more and more puzzle stones of this field comes to light.
Well, I need to ask again, if with using the word matriarchy as the way to describe the people who are continuing their ancient culture, is there any difference in terms of the matriarchal continuity and the continuity that would not be called matriarchal?
Yes, we have a clear differentiation of terms. A full matriarchal society, even today, which shows all the patterns which are described in the definition. But this remains of the older matriarchal epoch we call matriarchal elements. These are only elements, but not the full range of a matriarchal society. They are scattered elements of an older epoch and period. Elements.
That's
So
20
are you
minutes
still
on this topic.
Sorry.
That's the 20 minutes on this topic.
Yes.
Okay.
I want to, sorry, Diane, I have to add one thought. What is the difference between modern matriarchal studies and Marija's research? Sure, we all know that research is going on. New things come to light, and now we are more than 20 years after Marija's work, I guess 20 years. And of course, new research came up. For example, I mentioned only Göbekli Tepe or the motherline Çatalhöyük, which Marija Gimbutas could not know about. But when we are the younger generation of researchers, we have to include it. And so I have more material and maybe new interesting research which I can include in modern matriarchal studies, what Marija Gimbutas could not. And I hope in the future that the younger generation of researchers would find still more material and have more material to include it and develop the matriarchal paradigm further.
I think you're picking something up from me with the, the throat. Oh, my goodness. Well, this is such a fascinating discussion. I'm so glad that we're having it. Yeah.
With the rise of patriarchy in the Eurasian steppes, there is very interesting research about how it went on, about the developing of writing, about the consequences of desiccation and so on. This is research which came up, which is newer, and Marija Gimbutas could not know about it. So I find her explanation how patriarchy came up. She described the patterns of patriarchy very clearly, but how it came up, this is a little bit weak, because she could not have this newer material on which I can rely. This is quite usual. This is not a judge, but it's a quite normal progress of science. Yeah, and I hope that after me, younger researchers know where I had my deficiencies and can fill the gaps much better. Yeah, this is progress of science, quite normal progress of science, and we are happy that we have this progress.
Yes, absolutely.
Wonderful.
Wow.
I wonder if you can actually begin to bring us to a close with what's necessary for this time. This is, in our last, say, 20 minutes that we have together, 15, 20 minutes. Because we are very excited that we have another time with you in April. So can you bring us to a close in the next 15 minutes? That would be great.
Oh, sure. And then we can fill out
Yes.
more.
Yes.
Well, I think that you have to see, of course, that we're dealing with the past, the present, and the future, and how it all intertwines. And what is it that is the context for this situation that we find ourselves in now? What is it? What is it that really must be preserved, and what is it that perhaps is not to be preserved? I don't know. I mean, who's to decide? But still, I don't know. Heide, do you have anything to add to this? I'm a little bit not as sharp in the brain right now as I wish I could be, but I think that thinking about what has been and what is now, and then what needs to happen or what is happening, is something that I think that is very worth looking at.
Yeah, yes, I think we both know that this knowledge, which Marija brought into the world and which I try to bring in the world with modern matriarchal studies, is much and much more needed. It's needed. And our task and the task of our friends is to spread it, that people know there has been a completely different model how people can live without hierarchy, without domination, and so on and so on, and which is very well based in history, grounded in history. So this knowledge is obscured and they try with all their means to hinder its spreading, prevent its spreading, and to oppress it. So we do our best since many decades to spread this knowledge because we see it's needed. And what I found out for myself is, in these dire times in which we are, I felt I could not continue only as researcher and scholar. Also, I continue all the time. But that the political implications of our knowledge of matriarchy must be brought out, must be brought to light. So we all know that the situation with wars and this late decadent patriarchy is getting worse by the day.
Right.
So it's not possible to be a scholar only, even if we are scholars and continue to be scholars, but we have also to bring the political content out. And I tried to invent something which I call matriarchal activism, even if I don't know what it really is. But
Matriarchal what? I'm sorry. Activities?
Matriarchal activism.
Activism. Ah, okay.
Activism.
Uh-huh.
And so 2 years ago, I founded a coalition of organizations which openly call their activities and what they do and what they research matriarchal. And I started to bring these organizations together. We now are seven organizations which formed a coalition, a non-violent coalition of matriarchal organizations, and we want to do activism, matriarchal activism on conferences, on streets, that more and more people know that there is a different model, so that they do not think patriarchy is our destiny and fall in apathy and so on. It's not necessary. They should know there's a different way, a very important different way. We call this coalition Matriarchy Now, or the time is ripe. That matriarchy now should be known by many, many people, and that these matriarchal patterns should be taken up by many, many people. This is the only way to, I think, to go on with these dire times of patriarchy. And you see, we did the first actions. These are political actions. We did the first actions last year at the festival Matriarchy for Future. England at the Big Filia conference, and we will continue in Rome. This is a combination of political activism to bring it to more people, and of course, scholarship. We are all scholars. May I mention you, Genevieve, our dear Genevieve, and her wonderful work with gift economy and the Salon. She is also a part of this coalition, Matriarchy Now. Others. We are the 7 who are in this coalition. We try to broaden this coalition, but because there exist really women, also sometimes with men or without men, who try to revive matriarchal patterns and to live it. And I think it's so important that we come together and form a coalition and form a network, which is much bigger than when we go on in isolation with our important work. We do it together to bring to the open, how to say, to bring to the open public these ideas, even if they understand at the beginning only a little bit, but if they understand it's about egalitarian societies who did not need domination, who never needed, they don't need hierarchy, and where women and mothers are at the center and brings these values of care, gift giving, and peace. These are the values which are needed today. And this is not an abstract utopia. It's based on this matriarchal research, on the wonderful work many of these researchers did in this field. So they bring this political implication of these modern matriarchal studies and all this work which is included in this to the open public, to many, many more women, and to on the streets. This is our common aim. And we hope to create in this way a matriarchal movement. And I say it very keenly now, even a matriarchal revolution. For this late patriarchal times need a matriarchal revolution, nothing less.
So in that revolution, excuse me, how do you envision transformation in that revolution? What is the nature of it?
Yeah. I tried to develop a vision of a modern matriarchal society on all these levels of worldview, economy, politics, and social patterns. And in several opportunities, I gave speeches about this vision of a new matriarchal society, which of course is based on matriarchal patterns, but cannot repeat or imitate traditional matriarchal societies. We cannot do this. We have to transform it to our modern mindset. And I tried to give these speeches also last year at the Festival of Matriarchy for Future. And this vision of a modern matriarchal society is, to put it very short, the definition what a matriarchal revolution means on all the levels of society. This is not a traditional revolution in a patriarchal way, because everywhere where people in alternative movements try to change these exploitative patterns, they do a step of this matriarchal revolution, even if they don't label it at a moment like that, but it's nothing less than this. And we have a lot of alternative movements, ecological movement, community movement, movement of indigenous peoples who all do their steps, which are non-patriarchal if you look close at that. And we try to bring some of them together to focus this knowledge that it's about matriarchy, nothing less about a peaceful and egalitarian society where we can get rid of domination, especially of patriarchal dominations. This is what we are doing. I don't know if we will be successful, but we try to do our best.
Yeah. I think those kinds of distinctions are extremely important. Yeah. So thank you very, very much for that. I'm looking forward to our next meeting and discussion, and I'm glad it's not so far into the future.
Yeah.
Yes.
I
want to thank you both. And Jen, yes, Heidi, you have something you want to say?
Let me just make my last statement. At the Festival for Future, you could see one of our actions, Joan. We don't know if you had time to look at it. And in Rome, we hopefully do the next one. So you can get a feeling of this kind of activism we do together. And thank you for listening to me. I enjoyed our dialogue a lot.
Great. Thank you.
Wonderful. So Jen, did you have something you wanted to say before I actually close us out? Is there anything you'd like to? You need to unmute, my friend.
Just thank you so much for this beautiful gift of your dialogue. And may the matriarchal revolution happen very quickly, because we need it so badly right now.
Yes. Joan, I want to thank you so much for making the effort to come. I know you were unwell at the very last minute and you did not have your notes, but you did beautifully. And it was wonderful to actually have this dynamic dialogue, the format that we don't usually have because most of our speakers don't know each other well enough. So this is how beautiful it becomes when the two of you actually have had this extended time together to be able to freely dialogue. It was just beautiful. Heidi, always a pleasure. Always, always a pleasure. I look forward to seeing both of you in person in Rome. You'll be there in May. So, and I also look forward to our next virtual meeting with the two of you on April the 25th. So those of you who are with us today and watching the video recording, the chat and any of the questions will be sent to both Heidi and Joan so they can review those before they return to us back in April. If there are any other comments or questions, you can send them if you have their emails directly to our speakers, or you could send them via our maternal gift economy movement at gmail.com, and we'll make sure they get forwarded to both Joan and Heidi. This was so beautiful. I want to thank Diane and Lisa for being very attentive to us. I lost power for a few minutes, so that's why I disappeared from the screen. I was glad that I could return. I want to just tell you, in 2 weeks, we're very excited to have Genevieve Vaughan on March the 14th is going to be our main speaker.
April.
Oh, sorry, April the 14th, right. April, I'm going back in time. April the 14th, that she will be speaking on her latest research the topic is the maternal species. So we're very excited to have that topic. And then the following, in 2 weeks after following Jen's talk, March the 14th, we have again, Jen will be returning with Susan Petrilli, who will be speaking to us about the gift of the truth. With so much deception and lies going on, misinformation and disinformation, this is such a timely topic. So I want to thank you all again so much for your attention, and we are just very privileged to be able to bear witness to this dialogue, to be able to have you share this information and the deep knowledge that you both share, bridging the ancient past into the future where we can live it now. So thank you, everyone, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks. Everyone, please stay safe, be well, and take really good care. Bye for now.
Goodbye.
Thank you.